New Zealand Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community. Proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Today we're talking to SwipedOn founder and CEO, Hadleigh Ford. Welcome along, Hadleigh. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm really well, thanks.
Thanks for coming and taking a bit of time out from your schedule to join us on the show. I hope not a bad trip to Auckland.
No, absolute pleasure. And I took the easy option of flying up and down from Tauranga. So that's great.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, great to have you here. I've sort of followed little bits and pieces along the SwipedOn journey over the years. When did the business start?
It started in my head in about 2011.
Yeah.
And then saw the light of day in 2013.
Yeah.
So I had a bit of time to think about it before getting going. And so we've been around a wee while, but probably only in the news really in the last 3 or 4 years, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you had a good sized exit about 3 years ago, or sale, but you're still in the business. So there's some pretty interesting aspects there. I'm very keen to delve into, but maybe before we delve into SwipedOn, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your story, your background in terms of where you grew up and the different things you did before coming up with the idea for SwipedOn.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not many founders with my background, I would have to say, especially in the tech world. So I grew up in Warkworth, north of Auckland there, and I shipped away to sea at the age of 17. So I trained as an officer in the Merchant Navy, or started out as a cadet. And applied my trade internationally, starting out on container ships when I finally had my officer of the watch license, and then you work through to your captain's license. And from there, I followed a bit of a grass is greener approach. So I ended up working on cruise ships, which was phenomenal. Spent a number of years there, the highlight of which would have been being alongside in the Athens Olympics. When was that? 2004, I hope, if my maths is right. And that was pretty cool because we were I guess like a floating hotel there for 3 or 4 weeks. And absolutely loved my time on cruise ships. And from there, had an opportunity to work on super yachts as well. And the first super yacht I went to was the largest in the world, being built up in Dubai.
Wow.
For the Sheikh of Dubai as well.
Yeah.
So I couldn't turn down that opportunity. It was a Kiwi captain there.
Yeah.
And had the time of my life there. And spent a good 5 years working on board his yacht, which is pretty fun. And then from there, I shifted to another new build yacht in Germany, and surprisingly, that was the genesis of SwipedOn, where the idea came from. It was a new build yacht. The build price was about 90 million euros, and we were signing in the crew, the visitors, and the contractors just into a pretty average-looking paper visitor book, and I thought there had to be a better way. So, that's the TLDR.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, how do you describe SwipedOn to people today? Because you've got sort of core product and then a couple of others. So, what's your
Great question.
description?
We've always been, certainly since the start, replacing paper-based visitor books.
Yeah.
It's a greenfields area. We're literally just replacing paper sign-in books and receptions with a better, more efficient way. And in recent times, we've expanded that because now we're in thousands of receptions worldwide, 7,000 to be exact. And we have, I guess, more benefit to give them. So we're more of a smart office software nowadays. So our strategy, certainly in the last 12 months, has been to sell more to our existing customers and give them more value. So shifting from replacing paper books, so we still do that today, but also branching out to smart office technology. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And so from that initial idea that you had, what did it take you to actually get kicked off and start the business? And when did you need to start raising money? What did that picture look like?
Oh, great question. Like most people with these great ideas and multi-million a dollar idea has potential. I certainly know that now that there was that potential in it. I did nothing about it. I just thought that's a cool idea and carried on with my life, which is why it took a couple of years from thinking about it. And I actually left that super yacht that had been built in Germany after a couple of years, and I came back to New Zealand and worked as a harbour pilot. So that's quite an interesting role. And if people don't know about the harbour pilot side, you go out on a little pilot launch, you climb on board large vessels, often container ships or bulk carriers, and you bring them in with the captain, and you're communicating with the tugboats.
Oh, right.
Bring them alongside.
Yep.
And likewise taking them out to port. It's pretty cool, but it's all weather conditions, all hours of the night and day, climbing up a rope ladder. It hasn't changed the boarding methods for, well, to be honest, 500 years since pilots have been around.
Wow.
It was a pretty cool role, and it was down in the port of Timaru that I did that.
Yep.
And as part of it, having long hours and being, I would say, quite a high-pressure role, it had some benefits, and one of those was quite a bit of downtime. So we had week on, week off, and I don't sit idle particularly well.
Yep.
I was probably 29 or so at that stage, and I just started studying extramurally. I always had a bent for business and entrepreneurship, so I started to do extramural studies, and then I thought, oh gosh, this is going to take me 7 years to get a degree, and after a couple of papers I thought, no, throw that all aside and I'll just get on with something. And then as I'm sitting there thinking of what could I do, the app idea from a couple of years prior came back to me, and I literally got into Google, looked up app developers, and found a software house in Auckland to build the first version of the app. So it was pretty wild. One thing that I haven't done, certainly in the startup side of my career, is probably a lot of validation, and nor have I put a lot of, I guess, market validation is probably the fairest point, and product validation into it. So I signed the contract to get the first version built, and then I went and bought an iPad because I'd never used one. That's the kind of things that I did back then.
Right, and this is a product that basically was going to run purely on the iPad, right?
Correct, yeah. But I knew I'd seen the press. I thought they were pretty cool devices.
Yeah.
And I made all sorts of mistakes right from the start there, and subsequently had to build a second version.
So what were those early mistakes?
Yeah, not speaking. I thought I was the customer, and I didn't speak to any other potential customers. I had in my head that this will work in every super yacht in the world. I knew that pretty well. There's only 4,000 of them globally. And as the first version was being built, I recall even speaking to my sister. She said, well, this can sit in receptions, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, it can. And it was probably more of a crew and outboard that also signed in visitors when it was very first conceptualized. And after getting it live and speaking with customers, they said, well, look, we really just want it for visitors in and out. So I was probably a bit gung-ho in the early days, and listened to that feedback and adjusted the product accordingly. Saved myself. I could have saved myself a bit by speaking to customers beforehand. But then again, they may have scared me away and I would never have started. So sometimes you could just got to jump in.
Yeah.
And
you did an initial development, and then did you rebuild it in another platform or another technology?
Correct. Yeah. So I did one build in New Zealand, and we got paying customers. The first customer we had, I think, was Steven Spielberg's super yacht. I was like, oh, right, this business gig's pretty easy, and I'll die a happy man after selling something into Steven Spielberg's super yacht. I thought that was the biggest achievement of my professional career so far. But as I said, there was a lot of building that had to be done. It was going to be quite pricey doing it in New Zealand. So I actually went on a freelance website, found a couple of developers to build another version with the learnings that I'd had from the first one, and I think I tripled the price from that. So the first one was average something silly like $10 or $12 a month, and then I put the price up to $30 with the second version that was built offshore.
Yep.
And from all those learnings and having it on the App Store and having some good SEO and App Store optimization, so search engine and App Store optimization, we got a lot of customers on board. Just good timing.
That's great.
And then from there we brought the development in-house into New Zealand as well once we had the revenue.
Were you able to use the same code base, or did you have to have do another sort of reset when it came to that?
Yeah. So
it's quite interesting how often that this sort of stuff needs to needs to happen. And look, it's not an area I've delved into that closely, but over the years I've certainly noticed sort of, one brand has an app and they don't always update that app. They're like, oh no, we're no longer using that anymore. You're going to go and find a whole nother app in the app store.
Exactly.
Is that what you had to do in that case?
That's exactly what we did. Yes.
Yeah. So you kind of that. I mean, I'm not sure how that would be. I guess you're in a business to business type sense. You already got paying customers, so it's probably not quite as painful in some ways. But you think of consumer brand. What was one of them? I don't know. It could have been iHeartRadio or one of these sort of audio apps, and they had the app, and they had all these users, and they could, you'd expect them just to push it out so they don't lose any users, and then it was like, oh no, that one's dead, and you have to go and do a whole new install from scratch. How painful was that piece then?
Extremely.
Okay.
Yeah. Thankfully, we'd packed so much value into the new one. People did shift over, and as you said, in a B2B sense, one could argue it was slightly easier, but yeah, it was extremely painful and took us a good 18 to 24 months to actually port everyone across.
Wow.
We did do some maintenance, just kept the lights on the prior versions, but all of the new widgets and all the fancy things we were throwing, they were on the new one, to get people up and across. And I guess with that time frame, and we're only talking 18 to 24 months between a few builds, and then, goodness, for the last 5-6 years, we've maintained the sole one, and yeah, exactly. No, we're not going to touch that again.
You don't want to go through that process again. Yeah, and
right.
I would imagine the more customers you get, the more businesses that you're embedded into, the bigger of a deal it would be if you like to go through that again. Yeah. So it's just not something, not something. I mean, it's not something you'd need to do now. You've got complete control of it and so on.
Exactly.
But you can see how that would bite a lot of people going through that. That sort of process.
Yeah. No, there's all these kind of fundamental business decisions, but largely we're through all of that now and onto the good side. Yeah.
Yep. For any people that are curious around the technologies you use behind the scene, I don't know, it seems, I know you're not necessarily deep into that yourself as a coder or anything. Is there anything you can share on the, what sort of technologies you use behind the scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I don't have a background in tech, and I also don't have a background in business. So I've flown from the seat of my pants at an earlier stage, and obviously I've learned
ticking the boxes. I think on both parts so these days, Hadleigh.
Yeah, no, that's right. So we use Amazon infrastructure, so AWS there, and we also have the management is by Rackspace, so they offer managed services and on the server side. And then we've got a couple of iOS apps built in a couple of different languages, so Swift being the latest and Objective-C prior to that. And on the back end, we're doing the typical startup switching engines mid-flight. So we're going from a monolithic stack to kind of cloud-first microservices, which is pretty cool to get into, I guess, just, more modern computing, and it soon starts to go over my head, to be honest. But we've got some smart people in the room.
That's cool. And so from 2013 through to 2018, that must have been quite an interesting journey for you. From getting started, you brought investment on board during that window.
Yes.
And then in 2018, somebody came along and said, hey, we've got a little bit of money, and you had a transaction was done.
Yes.
Walk us through that journey from what was it like, like employing developers and so on after having had that sort of outsourced in a couple of different directions, and what that looked like. Was that something that came once you had funding, or you just had good cash flow? How did that play out?
Yeah, a bit of everything. For us, we bootstrapped it and then went to raise money. Because I was down in Timaru at the time, I didn't really know how well we were doing. I thought every business did that. Every business bootstrapped to $1 million of recurring revenue, and then they went out to market, which I've since learned, and also being on the investor side of the table, that is not the case. We were doing extremely well, and we were quite an attractive pitch when we did present our investment case, which is it's quite funny to reflect on how far we've come.
Yeah, a great position to be in.
Yeah. So we raised $1 million at the end of 2017. That was made up by a few cornerstone investors, K1W1, which is of course Sir Stephen Tyndall's investment fund, Enterprise Angels, also based in the Bay of Plenty, and a few other. We also had NZVIF at the time, the venture investment fund that came in. And that closed at the end of 17, and we were at $1 million of recurring revenue then. So bootstrapped it from zero. I self-funded it myself after having a bit of cash saved up after working on super yachts and
smart man.
free accommodation and free lunches.
Yeah, if you can make that work, right, all the better, because it would have allowed you just to really be focused without having to think about every 5 minutes where's the next dollar coming from and how am I going to raise
absolutely
raise it.
Yeah, and looking back, we did absolutely have a position of strength when we were raising, and I like to think I'm quite dialed in on the metrics, and we track metrics from website hits through to conversions and sales and all of that, and likewise on cash flow as well. And we did, of course, have some dicey moments, and you might want to put a payment on your credit card every now and then, like every startup did. So bringing in that external money just really helped us accelerate things. And not to mention, at the same time, competitors started popping up, and people in Silicon Valley doing the same thing. Yeah. And I thought, oh goodness, we've got to keep up with that.
So where were you on that? Were you one of the first? Was there anybody else doing this before you?
There was one other on the App Store, and they had a consumable price of $100.
Right.
So you pay it, and this was
just a flat price.
And you got access from the app. Yeah. So we were certainly the second on the App Store and the first to have a SaaS, so a subscription-based model, and that's where my price point of $10 a month came from. I just parked it against the 100 and thought, okay, well, $10 a month, there's 120, and people keep paying us. I didn't even know much about subscription businesses. So in my own arrogant head, maybe I think I invented SaaS, whereas everything else has been around for years, subscription-based software. And then from there, our competitors popped up pretty quickly. And to this day, our largest one, they've had funding to the tune of probably $50 million US, $60 million US. Which is great to see the capital that we've put in and the fact that we're batting, almost on par to these guys out of San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah. So we brought the money in. We pushed things along pretty quickly. It was a fun time. Shifted the business into the Bay of Plenty and started to build development capacity around there. And then only about 4 or 5 months after we'd closed the round, we had an approach from a UK listed company called Smartspace Software. And they were looking to buy a business in our area, in our space. Yeah. So,
wow. And how did they come across you? Just sort of looking at what was out there in the market?
Yeah, I've since asked, and there's a system called Capterra, which is business app reviews.
That's right. Yeah.
We always had a strategy of ranking in the top 3 there, and we were always there. And we do curate reviews as well. So. You'll be familiar with the Net Promoter Score. How likely are you to recommend?
Yes.
If somebody comes back and says SwipedOn's a 9 or a 10, which the vast majority of our customers do, we'll say, look, if you've got 5 minutes, do you mind leaving a review? So we make that circular. Those reviews on Capterra helped kind of validate where we are to new customers, and lo and behold, it helped validate the business to a potential acquirer as well, who was canvassing the market.
Mm. Yeah, that's a very, very useful technique. I guess there's probably a potential, and I don't know too much about Capterra and these different platforms. There's a potential to cross some lines with some of those sort of mechanisms if you're only forting your top rated
that's right. We invite any detractors to get in touch with us, and we do our best, of course, with every customer to be a promoter It's it's good fun.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good use of the technology, and I think that opportunity to sort of get that, create those feedback loops. I think is so important.
Yeah,
and not just in the software business. I think really broadly, every organisation needs to know how we're doing by our clients or our customers, right? And
whether you're running a cafe, if you search for the best restaurant down in Tauranga, the kebab shop nearby where I live turns up because they get people in there reviewing, and they're always giving them 5 stars. So
they make that effort
all the way through. All the way. It's not just tech.
Yeah. That's good. That's and I think having that goal to be in those top 3, then you can use that internally, right? From a development perspective. Hey, we've got to we've got to go a little bit further here, or we've got to do something that we're getting some demand for, and so on.
Yeah.
What's it like from that perspective of having some a product out in the market, software, where you must just get constant interest in new capabilities and new features, right? Nobody's ever entirely satisfied with software because everybody knows that it can be changed.
Yeah.
And so that's got to be a constant and an ongoing journey. So how do you deal with that and decide what things to focus on and put your efforts into?
Oh goodness, yeah, that is one of the toughest things about software, and it's been with us since day one, obviously through to today. I guess with anything in business, it's about prioritization, building systems, ensuring that our customers feel heard, and when they do request things and we ship them, that we let them know.
Yep.
So we're putting prioritization against people that have asked for something. They'll get notification before the general user base. They feel a bit special about that, and we feel good as actually having delivered certain features. And it's quite funny. It seems on the surface that we're delivering something extremely simple, and you build it once and sit back. But no, certainly not. We've got a team in excess of 20 developers, and we're constantly pushing things out, and it's fun. But really just about prioritizing and also sticking to your core customer as well. Our strategy has shifted tack a couple of times in the business's lifespan. And at present, we really are going for more of a mid-market approach. So we're not competing with it can be a bit of a race to the bottom for the cheapest software. We're certainly not on that.
Yep.
But we're also not delivering enterprise-grade software either. So we like to call that the mid-market. That is really our sweet spot.
Yep. So you open yourself up to a really, a large number of, potential customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't necessarily have... I don't know, the super extreme sort of high-end type. No,
I mean, if you're selling
features
into, this a top Fortune 500 company, they'll treat you like this is a vast generalization, but that your software is built just for them, and if you want, you must do this widget, otherwise we're out. And that's not really where we want to play. It's more of a build one thing for many. We'll deliver to the 98% that want certain things, and sometimes it might mean that we have to let customers go, or they're just too much on the fringe of, they're not quite where we are or where our growth is. So,
yeah. And I know some developers will have sort of a clear roadmap sort of marked out, and they publish that. Is that something you do, or do you sort of keep that internal and just sort of surprise your users with new capabilities as you're sort of ready and confident that they're ready for people to see? Yeah, no, we're not one of the companies that discloses roadmaps. We are rather open with our customers though, and if they do request things, we'll say it is on the roadmap. Yep. Just once you start to put things publicly, if business priorities or strategies change, then you can be a bit caught out. And I think a great example of that is last year, January, February. This is of 2020, of course. If we had shown our customers our roadmap in a few months' time, it would have been wildly different to what it was. And we were really at the forefront of COVID. And I hadn't mentioned, we're in 74 countries globally as well.
we play strongly in about 5 or 6, but we really are a global software business as well. So, yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what happened for you during COVID? What were the pressures, and how did you decide to respond? Because there weren't too many people kind of walking in and needing to check in receptions, right?
Exactly.
Around the world for a large majority of the last year.
And arguably,
so what do? You just shut up shop and just
well, that was
go
good.
home.
Yeah, it was good while it lasted. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Our business model was fundamentally challenged. There's no doubt on that. We relied on a touchscreen device at reception. So obviously a number of visitors would be touching that. Also employees would interact with that. So we had to scramble pretty quickly to deliver something. And with that global customer base, we saw things quite quickly. We saw customers come in from certain areas where COVID was a bit more prevalent, and it was kind of ones or twos, and then it was snowballs. And we would go back and say, oh, look, we'll make sure and disinfect between visits, but that only lasts so far. So what we did is we got the whole team together, invited everyone. This is an open session. Hey, we've got challenges ahead. What are some solutions we can do? And an obvious thing that a lot of us realised was to make this thing contactless or touch-free, so you don't have to interact with the device. How do we go about achieving that? QR, of course, and QR's definitely come to the fore in the last year or so. So we built a ability that there's a randomised QR that displays in the iPad. So because it's digital, it can change every 5 minutes, so it does lock you to that site, which is quite cool. And then you just come in and scan that QR code. Conversely, as a visitor, and then conversely it can be printed as well and displayed, and all of a sudden we've decoupled ourselves from somebody having to purchase a $600 iPad too, so there were benefits on the business. And to this day we have customers with dozens of sites and they haven't even purchased an iPad, they just have a printed QR, because the government tracing apps, they don't pass on the visitor information, which is important for health and safety as well. So that was one side of it, and we delivered the QR, the first version, so I'll call it the minimum viable product, for the QR sign-in in about 3 weeks, which is record time. The team were night and day.
Yeah, did anyone get any sleep during those 3 weeks?
No. And look, the first version was quite basic. Today, it replicates the entire visitor flow. You can take a photograph from your own phone, you can sign on it. It's really quite cool. And then also, because we sign employees in and out, we we created a iOS and Android application, so it's called our Pocket app, and then employees can do that to sign in and out. And we actually can sense whether, if you're signed into the office, that you're close to the iPad. We can validate that you're in the office without having to share location data. And likewise, with a lot of employees working from home, you can sign in from home and share that information from your personal device. So, a big strategic shift there, and we rolled that app out in, it was probably 2 months, the iOS and Android application for employees. And we've put a lot of our efforts into that direction as well, because as you've said, there's the volume of visitors, the footfall hasn't been there. In saying that, the requirement to screen and to monitor your visitors is a lot higher now.
Yeah.
So when people sign in, we can ask them, whether they've felt ill or travelled to areas of concern, and then we can apply auto screening and notify administrators within the host company if there's any issues there as well. So we're turning into a proactive tool, and from a pretty dire period in the business, we had huge tailwinds as well, certainly at the back half of 2020. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. Now, after you raised the funding that you talked about in 2018, you mentioned you became an acquisition target within, what was it, 6 months or so?
Yeah.
So tell us what that looked like, and what was the journey there, and you seem to come to a reasonably quick result.
Yeah, it was. The acquirer was, as I said previously, looking at a few companies. They were after what I would term a quick acquisition, and from first contact to close, we were in the region of 3 to 4 months, and with a large amount of due diligence, which was a pretty quick turnaround. Because we'd just raised money, we had all of our what we'd call a doc store in order. all of our company's office docs and investment documents and all of that. So we were actually in a really good shape for exit. So when they asked, for financials or whatever, I said, cool, I'll just share
Here it is, yeah.
Here it is. Here's the link in Google Drive and you're off.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact they were speaking with another entity and it took them 3 or 4 months to get the financials together, whereas we just exported it from zero, or I did at the time.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's the tip there, to be exit ready.
Yeah.
If you do have those approaches. And then from there, obviously, there's a bit of dancing back and forth on negotiations, and the lawyers do fight that out. And from where we are today, I mean, it could be seen certainly as an earlier exit, and especially in the last 6 months, there's been some quite significant exits in New Zealand. The landscape back in 2018 wasn't as certainly as busy with acquisitions, and the activity was a heck of a lot lower, which is quite interesting. On the exit side, for me personally, and all of the management shareholders, we sold down half in cash, and the other half were issued in shares.
Right.
So our acquirer is a listed company up in the London Stock Exchange called Smartspace Software. So I've still got a vested interest. A lot of us still have a vested interest in turning up each day. We've got one share ticker that we're looking at, and the work that we put in is directly reflected in that share price, which is pretty cool. I was never going to list my first company, that's for sure. I've always loved public markets and investment and all of that. So if I can have a tutelage from some proven players up there in the UK, and Frank, the CEO on Group, he started his own company and he did list that a while ago. So there's a really good track record that we can follow through, and ultimately get some mentorship as well. And I'm still around, coming in 3 years later.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that surprised me. Was hold on, you sold up 3 years ago, and you're still in the business, which quite often there's an exit as soon as it can be done. So I think I read in the Herald, and you can correct me on the numbers or whatever, but I think it said a $11 million sort of exit. So you did that half in shares,
correct,
and so on. So and I guess that would have varied with the other investors in terms of whether they've kept in, and obviously different entities, they get out as quick as they can get out, and so on. But the share price of the acquirer, of which, I mean, how do you have a feel for what percentage of the business that's sort of SwipedOn makes up? Like you're a reasonably significant part of that business, right?
Absolutely. It's been quite a journey. It's been a lot of fun. They have they're a group holding 2 software companies and one IT hardware company, I would say, that supports the software. Right.
So you're one of kind of three pieces to the business?
One of 3, and in the 3 years they have disposed of one company, so they sold that to US-based private equity, and they have also acquired another company which was originally built in Australia. They are also office software, but more into meeting room booking and desk booking. So it's been quite cool to see that and to be on that side of the table. And as far as SwipedOn, we have absolutely taken the forefront within that business. Our growth has been so compelling that we do make up the majority of what's termed as the market capitalisation, so the valuation of that business, which is
it's cool.
It's pretty cool. It's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of benefits from being part of a listed company. Our staff as well in New Zealand have employee share options issued as well, so that's great for retention, and it differs somewhat from startup share options where the liquidity event is a bit unknown. And sometimes it can be a bit like fairy dust. You just don't know if there's a tangible value against it.
Yes.
Whereas the day we issue options within the listed company, there's a value right there, and they benefit from the growth and work that people put in. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Especially unique for where we are, both in the world and also in the Bay of Plenty.
Yeah, that's really neat. And I know people go into different things around, is it good or not good for New Zealand when when these exits happen. But I mean, just looking at the share price there, looks as though it's sort of doubled in that sort of period of time. So that's basically the work that you and the team put in is directly sort of flowing back, I suppose, at any point if shares are sold. So
no, it's great.
Cool.
And as I said, I enjoy those discussions. The team here will often bring it up. I'll see what the share price did overnight, or I'll have a chat with the group CEO, and look, it's all fun. And I also acknowledge you have to take the good with the bad, and when the share price goes down, that's life, carry on. The best thing we can do is just grow a great sustainable business and concentrate on that, and the price follows. So
that's cool. So looking back over the years, what would you say have been the most stressful points? Obviously, sort of COVID, when suddenly people's need to use a SwipedOn app sort of dramatically reduced. Yet you had a whole team of people. How did that actually feel once you kind of realised what was going on?
Yeah, it was absolutely the most stressful moment or a period of time within the business. But look, I kind of relish, I love these opportunities when you really have your back against the wall. Possibly, I tend to think it's a bit to do with the mentality around pilotage as well, because I'd go out and join a ship in a howling southerly and it's 25, 30 knots and that was probably about the maximum. You bring them alongside, big swell, and the captain's sweating when you get on board, and once it's alongside safely, there's quite a bit of jubilation, and I feel like they're the days that you're paid for. You're not paid for the fair weather the when it's a mill pond and you bring it in and you're just having a happy chat and you park the vessel. So I kind of feel the business earned its dues during that time. We've come out a lot stronger. We've managed to add to our product suite and increase the value proposition. So, while it was stressful, I just take the other view that it was just a great challenge and awesome personal development and team development. I certainly can't claim that myself. From our brainstorming session through to delivery, it was, the whole team was behind it. And once again, things like share options and just everyone being on the journey together, helped that.
Yeah. Now, often with startup stories, I hear from people about working crazy hours, and you're left wondering, what impact does this have on family and marriages and relationships and everything else? How what's that sort of how's that played out for you?
Yeah, I don't switch off very well. But look, I believe I have a really good balance as well, and it's part of being in the Bay. We work extremely hard, but we also value that lifestyle. That's why people want to be here. Yeah. Look, you could sit in the middle of London or Auckland for that matter, and possibly earn a bit more. But we're about balancing that lifestyle out. So even as part of the onboarding, when we bring new employees in, hey, work is secondary. If you've got kids ballet or cross country or whatever, just go. Make sure and do that. So we put a lot of trust into our staff members. So people are very passionate. I'm more passionate than most, and I didn't think that would be the case 3 years after exit. But I just love it. And look, we've got a good balance. I think at some point, everyone needs a holiday every now and then, but it's good fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So any other learnings that looking back on the journey that you think would be of interest to others that are maybe going through something similar, or thinking about kicking off a startup, or they may be at a different stage in their journey. Any sort of things that stand out?
Yeah, probably there's so many things. Probably the key for me is actually just getting good advisors around early, people that have done it before. Doesn't necessarily have to be investors, but just having, a mentor or someone to lean on. And in that same vein, being a sole founder can be quite lonely, can be quite difficult, and bringing other people into the entity. As I brought a co-founder in, Ben Scott, who's now at another startup called VidApp. That was a huge sea change in the business as well. One mind didn't become two, it became 3 or 4, just collectively. So I would just get support around the employee, co-founder level, and also advisory. And then from there, don't muck around too much, just get in there and do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good. And any of the other points when you talked about getting money off a credit card and so on, like how much pressure was there in those sort of earlier days of the business, and how clear was your sort of view forward? Was it murky, or was it really, really clear how things were going to play out?
Yeah, for some reason I just had a stupid amount of belief. Yeah, and looking back on it now, it feels stupid. I don't know why. Wow. It does. I racking up on the credit card or wherever else. No, I just always had a ridiculous amount of confidence in it. Yeah. And it's since proven true. And we're one of those businesses, when we set our numbers at the start of the year, 9 times out of 10 we hit them. Month on month, it's almost metronomic. We know that growth. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you put things out in the world and they come back. Yeah, it's just goal setting,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's certainly pretty smart to set goals and to have everyone going after them.
Yeah. Well, actually, I recall one moment. We were in a big hole, and I had one potential angel investor, one of the first. And looking back, it was quite predatory, to be honest. They were trying to really push down the valuation of that. And then all of a sudden got a contract for the same amount, a very big government, a large contract offshore for that exact same amount. And I said to the investor, thank you very much, but if you have, we'll park it there. And I went on with that contract, and that actually helped fuel really the third stage of our growth.
Wow.
So I did turn down early investors that were pushing things along. I'll be very surprised if people did that nowadays. To be honest, the ecosystem is far more mature, and there's a lot more knowledge sharing as well. But I was probably quite naive back then.
Yeah, I remember when we did the podcast with Chris Heslip, sort of sharing some of the Pushpay story, and they were. I mean, it's a really fascinating discussion, but they were at a point where it was like they really needed some investment, otherwise maybe they were going to have to close the doors. And I won't share the detail on it, but it was absolutely fascinating. The decisions that they made through those things, and how that played out, and how how Chris felt things might have played out if they'd taken the other path. So really interesting to hear that come up. Somewhat similar type of challenge come up again, because I think there will be people with the other view, or that maybe made the opposite decision in a similar position, and then
knows where.
Really, really interesting, Hadleigh. Real privilege to have you on the podcast. So
You're welcome. Yeah, it's been great to be here.
Thanks for your time. Anything else you wanted to add before we finish up the show?
Oh no, look, not particularly. It's been a wild journey. The story is yet to be told. As I said, I'm still in there. We've got high aspirations with the share price up in the Northern Hemisphere there, up in the UK, which is fun. And, seeing investors jump on Twitter and, retail investors kind of share good news when it comes through is quite rewarding. So it's been quite a journey. I'm just still part way through, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Great. Oh, well, thank you for your contribution to the New Zealand tech sector, and all the best for the next steps forward from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
Excellent.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on the show today. We will look forward to having you back to listen into to the next episode. If you're not a regular listener or subscriber, then you can follow or subscribe through your favourite podcast app. A huge thank you to our show partners, Umbrella Connect, Gorilla Technology, Vodafone, HP, Datacom, Palo Alto Networks, Spark New Zealand, and Vocus New Zealand. So, thanks everyone. We'll look forward to catching you next time around, and thanks again, Hadleigh.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers.
New Zealand's Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community, proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.